Today I want to talk about why the words that you use to describe yourself are very, very important. Hey guys, welcome back to Tipharot. It's me Matt here, and today I'm discussing something that is a seriously neglected subject, and that is the words that you actually use to describe yourself. A lot of people don't realise this, but the words that you actually use to describe yourself have a very big impact on who you actually become. Think of it this way. Your subconscious is constantly observing and absorbing everything that you say. So if you describe yourself in a certain way, you constantly say that you have this issue, or you constantly describe yourself in a negative light, then your subconscious is just going to hear that, and that's going to be reinforced over and over and over until it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and you actually become that negative thing that you talked about. Now, this is a subject I actually feel very strongly about because, as you may or may not know, I used to be an addict several years ago, and basically, I very much disagree with one thing about the way that addiction therapy and so on usually works. Now, most of these processes are great, but there is one thing that I very much do not agree with about the way that they do things and that I chose to do differently. Now, you may notice that when I talk about it, I always say that I was an addict because of the fact that, I haven't used in several years, I've been clean and so on. Whereas someone else might say something like, I am a recovering addict, or they might even say that I am an addict even though they don't use anymore, or they'll say that I'm an alcoholic, 20 years after they stopped drinking alcohol or whatever. And that is something that I do not agree with, because if you remember what I said earlier, everything that you tell your subconscious repeatedly reinforces itself and basically becomes fact because, you believe that about yourself. So if you view yourself as an addict, then you are very, very likely to relapse and go back into that behaviour. If you view yourself as an alcoholic, even after you've quit, then you're very, very likely to turn back to alcohol. And I think that is actually a major contributing factor to a lot of people having relapses and so on. So I did things differently. I basically no longer considered myself an addict the moment that I got clean. I said to myself, that is no longer the person that I am. I'm detaching myself from that. I am becoming this new person rather than this, old addict who is just trying not to use. And this goes for everything. For example, if you are someone who suffers from depression, you may want to be careful about the words that you use. If you're constantly saying things like, I am depressed, I have depression, and so on, and talking about it a lot, then you're going to just reinforce that and you're going to make it worse. You may want to find other ways of referring to that same thing. So for example, you can say that I am feeling depressed currently, or something like that, rather than saying, I am depressed, or I have depression, or something like that. When you kind of take ownership of something negative like that, then you allow it to flourish and you allow it to actually get worse. Now, everyone is guilty of this. I'm still guilty of it. I often do it a lot with regards to the social anxiety that I sometimes experience. You will often hear me mentioning it in videos, and I will say something like, my anxiety. The minute you say something like, my anxiety, you're basically taking ownership of it and you're allowing it to become worse. In actual fact, you should refer it to something as like the anxiety that you've experienced then, and not regard it as this thing that is attached to you, that is, part of you. Because that's not how it is. All of these negative things you experience, even if you do have something negative that is stuck with you for life, you don't have to regard it as this part of who you are. You can regard it as, a symptom, as a thing that you experience, rather than part of your identity, and that will help you to suffer from it a lot less. And this even extends to simple things like the usernames that you use online. Kudos to the channel Mind and Magic for actually pointing this out in one of his videos. I never really thought about this before, but I've observed this as well. A lot of the time you will see people who have like a really negative, depressing attitude to life, and then you look at like the username that they go around calling themselves by and that all their friends online call them by, and it's like super depressed guy 9000 or something like that, and it's just like, yeah, if you really want to actually be someone else that isn't super depressed, you probably shouldn't put that in, the name that you go around using everywhere. Now, the reverse of this is also true. If you actually do want to improve as a person, then start to see yourself in a more positive light and start to use more positive language with regards to yourself. So for example, if you do suffer from anxiety at times and you actually do something to face it, rather than looking at things from, the negative side of like, oh, I only faced it partially, I didn't completely conquer it or anything like that. Look at it from a positive light and consider things that you did do well and be proud of yourself and actually state that aloud, either to yourself or to other people. Use good language when describing yourself. And don't put yourself down in this way. A lot of people, you know, they try to be humble, and as a result they focus on putting themselves down. Now, you know, being humble is good, but you don't need to do it to the point of, you know, saying that you're not good at anything. Because if you do that, you're just going to encourage those beliefs to actually become reality. And at least if you do that sort of thing, you know, you do put yourself down a little bit, try to be careful about the language that you use. It's a lot better to say, for example, I'm not the best at this, than it is to say, I'm terrible at this. Because, you know, no one's the best at something, and, you know, you're admitting that you're not the best at it, but you're not putting yourself down and saying that what you did is terrible. Whereas if you say that, you know, what you did is terrible, then you're reinforcing the idea that you're not very good at that, and it's going to be harder for you to be anything but terrible at it. So anyway, I hope that you found this video helpful, and if you did, remember to subscribe up there for more. And also, if you haven't already, then check out my Patreon page. There's free information and content available there, even if you don't actually want to support the channel. So check that out. Thank you guys for watching. Take care.